The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a world full of great heroes, and of course, despicable villains. Just like in any other superhero movie, these villains can often be highlights of the film. We love seeing them put their plans together, their battles with the hero, and their eventual defeats. While the MCU has a few villains who live to fight another day, most of them meet a grisly fate. Today, we'll be looking at the many villains of the MCU and determine which ones met a mostly painless end and which ones probably should have escaped when they had the chance. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Bench, and this is Marvel Villain Deaths, Gruesome to Most Gruesome. We'll be starting with the villains who die from wounds. Some may come from a sword, others may come from a gunshot, but they're painful all the same. Earning the title of least gruesome, we have Mysterio from Spider-Man: Far From Home. After a grueling battle with Spider-Man, Mysterio is accidentally shot by his drones in the abdomen. He unsuccessfully makes one more attempt to kill Peter Parker before he succumbs to his wounds and dies. That seems to be the end of him, but come on, they don't call him the Man of Mystery for nothing. It's hard not to think that Mysterio managed to survive, especially as the film tries its hardest to convince you that he is truly dead. It's entirely possible that Quentin Beck cheated death. Perhaps he'll come back to get revenge on Spidey in a future installment. Even if we wanted to believe he died from the drones, his death is hardly horrid. It's just bullet wounds he suffers from, and nothing makes it seem all that different from similar deaths in this film genre. Because of its lack of punch and the somewhat ambiguous fate of the character, we had to give this death the award of least gruesome. Next, we have Eric Killmonger from Black Panther. During the climactic confrontation with his cousin T'Challa, he tries to use a Wakandan spear to take him out. T'Challa gets the spear and impales Killmonger. The cousins share an emotional conversation when T'Challa takes Eric to look at the sunset. T'Challa remarks that they can save him, but Eric refuses to live the rest of his life in prison. He pulls a spear out and dies. There's definitely a gruesome element to Killmonger's death. After all, being stabbed by a spear is hardly a painless way to go. However, we feel Killmonger's end is a more peaceful one than gruesome. He dies watching the sunset, finally getting to see the beauty of Wakanda he had only dreamed of as a child. T'Challa also forgives him, something that doesn't quite happen for most entries on this list. Even though his end is a peaceful one, we can definitely confirm he's dead, which we can't do for Mysterio. Being the first villain character we can confirm is dead, it seems appropriate he takes this slot on the list. Our next entry is Alexander Pierce from Captain America: The Winter Soldier. One of Hydra's head honchos, Pierce met his demise at the hands of a bullet from Nick Fury. He's shot twice in the chest, and the knockback sends him through a glass wall. On the surface, Pierce's demise seems like a run-of-the-mill action movie death. You wouldn't be wrong for thinking that, but we believe a few elements make this one more interesting than previous entries. 1. Pierce is just an average human. He doesn't have a powerful vibranium suit, and he's no master of illusion either. He's just a regular guy, which makes his demise one of the more realistic ones in the MCU. The lack of a superhuman suit or abilities made the wound worse in comparison to our earlier entries. Let's not forget that he's an older man too. His death is also anything but peaceful. It's quick and to the point, which kind of makes it more of a standout death. He doesn't have a speech ready or any screams of pain, just a short whispering of, "Hail Hydra."
Hail Hydra.
It makes his death creepy, and it shows the audience that even though its leader inside S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone, Hydra itself is far from over. As the Red Skull put it, cut off one head, 2 more will take its place. Finishing off the wounds category, we have Nebula from Avengers Endgame. This isn't the original timeline Nebula, of course, but a Nebula from the year 2014. She follows Thanos' orders, and she's desperate to please him. As they travel into the future to wipe out the Avengers, she assumes the original Nebula's identity and tries to take the Stark Gauntlet out of their hands. She's eventually confronted by her present self. Despite her best efforts at trying to reason with her, 2014 Nebula refuses to disobey her father.
He won't let me.
The present version is left with few options and shoots 2014 Nebula right through the heart. We've seen several characters die from a bullet at this point, but this is the only one to die from a laser gun. We can see that it's a more gruesome weapon to die from. as the wound is much more large and noticeable than previous entries. There's also an element of tragedy. She could have easily kept on the path of her present counterpart and become a hero. Unfortunately, she becomes a dark reminder of who Nebula once was, and how she could have lived the rest of her life if she continued to serve her father. That wraps up the deaths from wounds. Now we move towards the crush deaths. First, we have Malekith from Thor: The Dark World. Malekith isn't a memorable villain in the pantheon of MCU baddies. However, he stands out as being one of the only two villains who die as a result of being crushed. After a long and hard-fought battle with Thor, Malekith is finally defeated after being teleported to his home realm. He's crushed with his warship when it's teleported to his location and lands on top of him. Malekith's death is a unique one, but it doesn't have that gruesome edge you'd expect it to have. One, we've seen Malekith take so much abuse at this point in the fight that it doesn't really have the shock factor. Second, it feels more comedic. The way the scene is framed feels more like you're supposed to laugh at his defeat. Even though these elements weaken the violence of his death, it's still undeniably gruesome. A giant ship landing on top of you would really hurt, whether you were a human or a dark elf. Rounding out the deaths by crush, we have another Thor villain, Hela, the main antagonist of Thor: Ragnarok. This goddess seemingly couldn't be killed. Only after intervention by Surtur, the one who would bring about the fall of Asgard, was she destroyed. Surtur does precisely what the prophecy of Ragnarok said he would, and begins to destroy Asgard. Hela tries to fight back, but is crushed by his sword. Hela's death is more gruesome than Malekith's, because she isn't just crushed by the weapon, she is obliterated by it. Having your entire body shattered by a sword is no doubt a bad way to go out. If she weren't killed by that, then the implosion of Asgard definitely would have done the job. Her death is the most gruesome so far because there isn't anything left of her. It's also ironic that the goddess of death, who was so confident she couldn't be stopped, dies most painfully and explosively of any of the villains on this list so far. Speaking of explosions, it's time for the explosive deaths. These villains bring a whole new meaning to the term, going out with a bang. The first in this category is Whiplash from Iron Man 2. In the film's climax, Iron Man and War Machine duke it out against this armored foe. As Whiplash wraps his electric whips around their necks, the two shoot each other with energy blasts from their arc reactors. After this, Whiplash is left dying in his suit, but he still has one last trick up his sleeve.
You lose.
All of his drones, including the suit he's encased in, are rigged to self-destruct. The heroes escape, and he's caught in a final explosion. You basically get two explosions in one. The explosion generated by the arc reactors is certainly the more gruesome one. This might be helped by the small fact that we actually see this one. On the other hand, we don't actually see him explode when his suit self-destructs. This is why we rank this lower than other deaths by explosions. Also, we can assume his armor did a decent job protecting his body from the first blow. It was certainly enough to kill him, but he would have been a lot worse off if he didn't have the armor. These reasons ultimately keep him from being put higher on this tier, and him not being interesting doesn't help him either. Next is Aldrich Killian from Iron Man 3. Killian in this film almost feels like a villain out of a horror movie. Nothing ever seems to stop him. Thanks to the superhuman abilities his Extremis virus granted him, he possesses a healing factor that seems unstoppable. Even after Tony encases him in a suit rigged to explode, Killian comes back to life. Pepper Potts finally comes to Tony's rescue and throws an explosive bullet at Aldrich. She then shoots it with a repulsor blast, killing Killian in the subsequent explosion. Killian's death gets points from us because it has a nice dose of body horror. After it appears that Tony's suit self-destructed to finish him off, Killian reappears, covered in flames. His body has scars all over, almost as if he's made of lava. It makes him look like one of the scarier villains in the MCU. Like we said before, it goes a long way in making this villain feel like an unstoppable horror movie monster. Even though it is undoubtedly the most gruesome death at this point, there are a few elements that hold it back from being worse. Aldrich goes through so much that it gives us a feeling of relief when he finally dies. We can also guess that his powers probably made the pain a little more bearable, though dying in an explosion would hurt whether you're a superhuman or not. Regardless, We feel there are enough gruesome elements to this demise that earn it this spot on the list. The next slot goes to Ironmonger from the original Iron Man. Kind of funny how the main villains in all the Iron Man films die in an explosion, right? Even more interesting is that this is the second Iron Man villain to be killed by Pepper Potts. As he battles Iron Man in the film's end, Obadiah Stane makes a critical error and stands right above a large arc reactor stored inside a complex. Tony orders Pepper to overload the reactor, causing Stane to be electrocuted to death. After that, he tumbles into the reactor, exploding upon impact. Stane's death definitely stands out from the villains in the sequels. Death by electrocution is already a gruesome start, but it's the explosion that occurs when he falls into the reactor that really makes this a dreadful demise. The lightning is a huge bolt shot into the sky, and Stane receives the worst of it. It's also a huge explosion, and you can rest assured that there is none of him left when it's all said and done. The same goes for the building encasing the reactor too. We can't even tell the suit made it a little less painful. The film makes it clear that his suit lags behind Tony's in quality. He's very exposed in the suit, and could have even fallen out in the final moments before impact. The ferocity of the explosion, as well as everything preceding it, puts Stane at this spot on the list. Alright, that's enough of Iron Man. Our next death happens to be someone who isn't as much a person as they are a planet. It's Ego from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Ego dies as a result of an explosion bomb placed in his brain, giving a whole new meaning to the term headache. As the bomb finally goes off, his human avatar disintegrates, and all the pieces of his being are blown to smithereens. We feel Ego as a more gruesome death than the others who die from an explosion because of how different it is from those others. He doesn't get caught in an explosion and immediately perish. Instead, his organs are blown up one by one. Even though he's a living planet, it's not like it would hurt less, especially that all organs in his body gradually exploded. We can only imagine how painful it is for Ego. No doubt he has way more vital organs than a human does, making his death a slow one. The fact it's a more gradual death than the others also makes it more gruesome. It's not over in seconds, and we see through the number of explosions happening that there is a lot to this living planet. Those reasons are why Ego gets this spot on the list. Next is Crossbones from Captain America: Civil War. Crossbones' death seems like a typical death by explosion at first. After a fight with Captain America, he tries to detonate a bomb that will take both of them out. As the bomb goes off, however, Wanda Maximoff uses her powers to contain the explosion. Right here, the death starts to take a more gruesome turn. The bomb has already gone off at this point, and Crossbones' body is being consumed by the explosion. Like Ego before, Crossbones' death is long and painful. He screams of agony, only making the scene more horrid. Wanda then accidentally throws his body into a nearby building, killing many relief aid workers in the ensuing explosion. Crossbones could have had an unremarkable death, but Wanda's interference makes this one of the more creepy deaths in the MCU. The collision into the building makes it even worse, as it leads to the deaths of many others, something that isn't really seen or referenced in other deaths. It's a dark opening for this film. It shows that superheroes may not always find the most peaceful solutions to conflict. The duration of the death scene, coupled with the innocent people who also died in the explosion, certainly makes this one of the more awful deaths in this category. In the final spot for the explosion deaths, we have Ronan from the first Guardians of the Galaxy. At the end of his battle with the Guardians, both he and Peter Quill make an attempt to nab the Power Stone. Quill gets to the stone faster and begins to feel the full power of an Infinity Stone. The other Guardians soon unite with him and use the power of the stone to destroy Ronan. The power is ultimately too much for Ronan, and he explodes. We feel this is the most gruesome death by explosion because of what causes the explosion. The Infinity Stones are some of the most dangerous items in the entire MCU, and the Power Stone is no exception. We're told frequently throughout the movie that this stone is not to be messed with. The consequences for doing so are dire. Ronan gets to experience this firsthand, as his death is another slow and painful one. The stone's power runs all through his body, and he's levitated in the air. Finally, the power causes him to explode. Though the explosion isn't as big as prior ones, it feels far more morbid. Having your entire body torn apart from an Infinity Stone is a painful way to go out. It sets the tone for what these stones are capable of. Ronan is deserving of the highest spot on this tier, and anyone who disagrees will stand accused. That's it for the deaths by explosion. Now we move on to the deaths that would cause any supervillain to surrender on the spot. These are the cruelest deaths. First, we have Thanos from Avengers Endgame. This isn't the Thanos from the beginning of the movie, but the Thanos that travels from 2014. At the end of the film, Thanos is finally stopped after Tony Stark uses the gauntlet to take out Thanos and all of his minions. Just like the heroes did years earlier, Thanos is turned to dust. On the surface, the deaths in the MCU as a result of the snap don't seem too gruesome. They're just sort of slowly erased from existence. So how could that possibly be considered one of the worst ways to die? As you know more about it, you can start to see that this is indeed a horrifying way to go. Directors Joe and Anthony Russo stated that while envisioning how dying from the snap would feel, they imagined it would be similar to the feeling of throwing up.
I don't feel so good.
They added that the organs in one's body would be snapped away gradually, with the body being the last thing to go. And the idea of disappearing completely from existence is already a creepy one, but slowly losing your organs in the moments beforehand makes it even more gruesome. With its unique imagery and backstory, we had to put it in the top 5. Fourth place goes to Ultron from Avengers Age of Ultron. While Ultron has many bodies in this film, we're just gonna look at his main form. After all, it is the one we see the most. After being tossed out of a jet by the Hulk, the android is reunited with Wanda Maximoff. Wanda, still distraught over the death of her brother, rips Ultron's heart out. While it's up for debate what use an android would have for a heart, this death definitely stands out as one of the more brutal ones. It's not every day you see a fatality ripped right out of Mortal Kombat in a superhero movie. It definitely lives up to the cruel factor. This is one of the few villain deaths where the heroes seem to take joy in killing their foe. Most of the other deaths comes as a result of just needing to stop the villain. Here, Wanda's main objective is to make sure he suffers as much as she has. She is very slow in taking the heart out, no doubt enjoying his suffering. Ultron is helpless in this scenario, as he had just endured a rough beating from the Hulk. The fact he can't do anything about it helps make it one of the darker villain deaths. The brutal nature and uniqueness of this death make it a perfect candidate for 4th place. The bronze medal belongs to Yellowjacket from Ant-Man. Who would have thought one of the smallest, no pun intended, Marvel films would have had such a gruesome villain death?
Now where'd you go, little guy?
At the end of the movie, Yellowjacket attempts to take Scott Lang's daughter hostage. Ant-Man saves her by shrinking and damaging the mainframe of Yellowjacket's suit. His suit collapses into himself and he is shrunk to the quantum realm. His death is undoubtedly gruesome, as we see his limbs mangled and crushed into himself. Yeah, this is another Mortal Kombat death. He begins to resemble a squash bug more than a man in a suit of armor. One can only imagine what a skeleton looks like in the aftermath of this. And what's worse is his screams of pain. Surprisingly, it isn't that often of an occurrence for villains in the MCU to do this as they die. This one little detail goes a long way in making this one of the more disturbing deaths in the MCU. The silver medal goes to Thanos? Yeah, Thanos is on our list twice, look at that. This is a Thanos from Infinity War. At the start of Endgame, the heroes are eager to get back at Thanos. Thanos is living a peaceful existence, but that all comes to an end when the Avengers ambush him. Thor uses Stormbreaker to chop his hand off, and Thanos groans in pain. Finally, after the heroes learn the stones no longer exist, Thor cuts his head off. Clean. Villains getting limbs chopped off doesn't happen a lot in the MCU, and Thanos has to deal with that twice. That can make anyone squeamish, and that is a grim way to start a superhero movie. And this was a messy death too, as some of the blood even makes its way onto Nebula's face. His death is made even worse by the fact that Thanos already seems to be in his weakest condition when this fight begins. He used the stones to destroy the stones, an action that almost killed him. We quickly see what he means, as half of his body is covered in scorch marks. Thanos' body is suffering already, and he's put in even more pain when this all occurs. In conclusion, the savageness of his death is more than enough to get 2nd place. What's worse than a decapitation? How about choking? The gold medal goes to Loki in Avengers Infinity War. While it is true that Loki is more of a hero at this point in the story, we can't forget that he was the main antagonist of both the first Thor and Avengers films. We couldn't overlook this one. In the film's opening, Loki attempts to kill Thanos, and things don't go so well, and Loki is promptly grabbed by Thanos. He's lifted off his feet, and Thanos begins to strangle the god of mischief. Loki tries to wrangle his way out, but it is no use. His face turns blue as a result of the strangulation, and finally, Thanos snaps his neck. Its duration and degree of violence make it an easy choice for the most gruesome death. The scene is drawn out in a way previous deaths on this list just aren't. It's honestly an excellent start for the film, perfectly showing the audience the legitimacy of Thanos as a threat to the Avengers. It's also the most emotional death. Whether he be a hero or villain, we've gotten to know and care about Loki for over almost a decade of movies. Seeing him die in such a brutal manner makes his death tragic. With its violence and emotional edge, it's a no-brainer for the title of most gruesome MCU villain death. Alright guys, that's the list. Let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our most gruesome playlist, where we break down the most gruesome moments in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.